I'm a post 9/11 convert. I've only known Islam being sort of a threat in that way. So the idea that I've never been a Muslim that simply could think about Islam on its own terms.
Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there.
No mosque here!
I'm Arnold Yasin Mol. I'm a doctoral researcher at Leiden University and a lecturer at the Islamic University of Rotterdam. One of the things you start to do for it, you become very apologetic. You try to show that Islam is a safe religion. You don't need to be scared of us. Problem with that as well is you become very apologetic and you take the fears of the other, the fears of Dutch society, you take it too seriously, not recognizing that it is racism, that it is discrimination. And the same thing with the rise of anti-Islam parties. They're not simply anti-immigration parties, but sort of they're openly anti-Islam, that being anti-Islam is more important to them than being anti-immigration. For me, of course, that's interesting as a convert, because like, where do I go? You cannot immigrate me, you know? So I'm a native Dutch. I'm exactly the type of white person they want. Blue eyes, blonde. So I'm their preferred typology as a person in Holland, but I became Muslim. And so for me, there's no expulsion. You cannot throw me out of Holland. So the thing that's, the way I started to think about it and use those terms is that Islam is a Dutch religion. It is a Dutch identity because I don't know anything else.
And we have immigration from those countries to the Netherlands, and we should not import a retarded political Islamic society to our country.
So in Holland, there's also a lot of issues with certain types of public religion. So one of the things that I noticed as a convert slowly on is that being a Muslim, of course, we have a very dominant presence of Islam in your daily life when it comes to the prayers, when it comes to food. And then you notice that these things are only very selectively present in Holland, partially because, of course, like with, for example, halal slaughtered meat, that's something that the Muslim community themselves had to introduce into Holland. Same thing with mosques. They had to be built, of course, by the community themselves. So even if you, for example, if Muslims, you want to pray, if you visit the city and you want to pray, technically mosques are very hard to find to go pray. So it's those little things as a convert you start to notice is that the amount of engagement Islam asks of you to be a public Muslim, to be engaged with Islam constantly in your life, there are very minimal facilitations in Holland. That partially has to do with the community still building up those facilitations, but also because Muslims are sort of not fully allowed to create those facilitations. Islam is not in that way conflicting with being Dutch, with being part of Holland itself. There's a difference between Islam being difficult to practice in Holland and Islam not belonging in Holland. Those are two different things.
This is our soil, that this is our country, that it's not an Islamic kind of raqqa.
Now, for example, now with the Party of Freedom of Geert Wilders, when it became the biggest, there were a lot of political analysts that were trying to say, oh, it had to do with anti-immigration or with anti-EU. But in the end, they did a lot of research and it showed most people voted for the Party of Freedom simply for their anti-Islam points of view. So then Islamophobia becomes a reason to vote for someone.
Maak ik het onderscheid. Er zijn trouwens ook heel veel mensen, of je het nou leuk vindt of niet, die van niet-westerse afkomst, vaak zijn dat moslims die wel de boel verzieken.
Over the years, I started to understand Islamophobia is it's not represented by a politician or political party or Islamophobic incidents. If you ask many Muslims, oh, did you experience Islamophobia? Most will say no, because they're thinking you're asking them about incidents, like did somebody throw something at me or say something at me? A lot of Muslims don't experience that type of Islamophobia. Partially also because 90% of Dutch people don't interact with Muslims. People are still living in bubbles. So the sort of direct person-to-person Islamophobia on the street those are incidents that are, of course, there are hundreds of them every year, thousands of them. Mosques that get attacked, windows thrown in. But the institutionalized Islamophobia is sort of in the face of everybody. And we're so used to it that most Muslims, when you ask them about Islamophobia, they would not flag that, or they will point at the Party of Freedom in Geert Wilders. But they, for example, ignore the fact that, for example, Christian parties have a lot of times said very Islamophobic things as well for years and years. If you think that the Party of Freedom is sort of the only version of Islamophobia, then you're not looking right at what Islamophobia is, because it's spread out in most political parties.